And let's talk about esports for a second. Now, esports is usually known for like one-on-one, three-on-three, like small team-based games. Could you imagine having 20 people on 20 people or even 50 people on 50 on stage playing your game competitively in esports?
Well, I've thought a lot. I'm a giant esports fan. I'm actually a huge esports fanatic. I follow PlanetSide and Dota. I followed Heroes of New Earth for a really long time. So I love that scene a lot. PlanetSide to me, first and foremost, is a competitive game. There's a big difference between a game that's competitive and an esport. But there doesn't necessarily need to be. There's a lot of ways that people think of esports kind of narrowly, and I think it could be expanded quite a bit. With PlanetSide 2, we have the ability to make a game where you have 12 versus 12 matches. And then in a different weight class, essentially, you could have 24 versus 24, and 64 versus 64, and 250 versus 250. PlanetSide 2 really offers that ability that no other games do in that regard. So if you think of outfit sizes like weight classes in boxing, it's a totally different viewership experience when you're watching a featherweight boxing match versus a heavyweight boxing match. And I think PlanetSide 2 could be that same thing. In terms of the logistics of how does it work for esports, I want to get 250 guys to go to some event and sit there in a giant soundproof booth. It's going to be really challenging. But I don't know that that's necessarily a requirement either, because I think that so much of PlanetSide and the success of it is about having the coordination. So in a lot of ways, you could have the leaders, the squad leaders, the platoon leaders be the ones who are actually there coordinating it, and other guys who are at home playing and filling in the ranks that way. So I do think that there's an opportunity for us to have esports and tournament modes in the game. But the one thing I would say about it is I would not want them in any way, shape, or form to take away from the actual main gameplay of PlanetSide. I think that that would be a terrible way to implement it. And I think that there's a lot of opportunities to be able to implement tournaments, esports, ladders, in such a way that it reinforces and makes the actual metagame of PlanetSide, the global conquest game, better. And I think that that's the way to do it.
And as far as the game's always evolving, like you said yourself, it's a beta version and it'll always grow. Even when you release it, it's still going to continue to grow. What's the hardest thing about fixing old ideas and then getting new ones by fixing the old ideas?
That's a great question. I think probably the hardest thing about fixing old ideas or removing old ideas is ego in a lot of cases. A lot of times you'll get attached to an idea that doesn't necessarily work. I've said this before to a lot of people on my team and outside my team, that if you want to make a great game, you can't have sacred cows. You can't have something that has to be there, otherwise it's not going to work. Because sometimes you might find that that thing is something that's wrong with the game. The resource system that I just talked about us removing was sort of like that. For a long time, people were like, well, we can't remove the resource system because what will the game be? And it's like, well, if the resource system is causing problems with the game being fun, then it doesn't matter. If you need to figure out something else to do, you need to figure out something else to do. You can't get so attached to an idea that you're unwilling to look beyond it and see if it's actually hurting your game. And I think a lot of games do suffer from that, where they say, hey, this is our game, we're not going to change this part of it. And then you end up letting yourself sink because of that. And we're unwilling to do that. We're absolutely listening to feedback. If our players are telling us that something doesn't work, it doesn't matter if I love it. It doesn't matter if our team thinks it's the greatest idea in the world. If the people who are playing our game is saying it's not working or it's hindering their experience to have fun, you got to get rid of it. So I think that's one of the big challenges with being able to look at something and figure out if you need to change it, is just that kind of momentum and the ego associated with, well, I really like this idea, I don't want to change it. But moving beyond that, you can end up seeing that what you're really working for and what you're really trying to do is create the best game possible. And sometimes you have to sacrifice stuff that you care about to be able to make the best game possible. And as long as the end of the day, what you really care about is making the game great, then you're always making the right decision.
And this game is very unique in its own right. And if someone who's never heard of PlanetSide 2 wants to get into it, where can they get a beta key?
Where can you get a beta key? Well, you can go to planetside2.com and sign up. You can hit us up on Twitter, at PlanetSide2. I'm at Higby. You get me at Higby on Twitter, I will DM you a key. Say, I want a beta key, I will send you a beta key. We're also, our art director, Tremel, he's a PS_T-Ray. He'll give you a beta key too. So if I'm not there and I don't give you one, talk to him, he'll give you one. We do lots of giveaways all the time. I just gave 1,000 beta keys to PlanetSide Universe to give away to people who sign up there. So there's plenty of options out there for you to be able to find a beta key if you want to jump in and play the game.